He was the first American Indian writer of international renown who was published and is still published.
When somebody like Eastman asserts himself as an Indian person, he's doing so in defiance of that fundamental belief that Indian people are going to fade into the sunset. He's refusing to fade.
I see him as someone who wanted his people to survive above all else. He needed to bring a knowledge of the humanity of his people to a wider world.
Long before I ever heard of Christ or saw a white man, I had learned the essence of morality. Civilization has not taught me anything better.
I've come to believe that the land acts as a magnet, drawing us back to our indigenous roots, back to the earth where our ancestors have traveled and their bones have rested since time began. For me and my family, that land is Minnesota. Hamitakuyepi, Kebini Makiapie, Da Makota, Bade Wakantuan ka Wakbetuan Hemachaye, Bade Ota Edwati, Aharipi Winde Meye. When I received my Dakota name, brings them home woman, I was taught that my job was to bring my history and the story of my family back home to our people, back to Minnesota. My family and I have spent the last 10 years searching, piecing our story back together and filming our journey.
You look down in the valley over here.
We're looking at our history through the life of one of our ancestors, our grandfather, Ohiesa. He lived a remarkable life during an extremely challenging era for American Indians. He was a doctor, social reformer, and author who wrote under his English name, Charles Alexander Eastman.
He is among the few people who gives voice to what it was like to live in the pre-reservation period and the experiences that he had as he transitioned into the white world. At the same time, giving us an example of what it's like to do that and to keep yourself whole, even though you're having to take on a part of a new culture that was totally alien to you.
Dakota people were removed from our ancestral homeland in Minnesota when our grandfather Ohiesa was just 4 years old. I was in my mid-20s when my family moved back to Minnesota. We were drawn to the places where our ancestors had lived, but we found few traces of them.
You drive around Minnesota and you see all these place names and you see all these street signs for Hennepin and Nicollet, and you start to wonder, who are these people? And why is it that people like my grandfather Ohiesa, who was one of the first writers to come out of this area, who was one of the first American Indian medical doctors, why isn't he remembered and acknowledged?
Even some in our own tribal communities outside of Minnesota do not know this history. But thankfully, today, we have many relatives from the Dakotas all the way into Canada who continue to share Ohiesa's story.
So in the last probably 17 years, I've tried to spread the word about Dr. Charles Eastman.
These are human beings. These are lives.
To help tell the true story of our people, I've become an educator and a public historian. I am part of a community of scholars telling history from an indigenous perspective, and there's an urgency to this story.
How old were you when you wore these?
Just baby.
Still a little baby?
Yeah.
You know, you can't just go into the archives and research our history. So much of our history is oral history, and it comes from our communities, it comes from our elders, it comes from our family members, and we have to get to them in time. What does Charles Eastman's Dakota name mean? Ohiesa?
Ohiesa.
Yeah.
The word Ohia means winner. When you say Ohiesa, it means always a winner.
Ohiesa was given this name after his village won a game of Dakapshichapi, also known as lacrosse.
We're a generation that is on the cusp of losing so much if we don't reach out and gather this information and help carry it forward.
Mary Faribault
Yeah,
Charles.
that would be his sister. She never spoke English.
She didn't speak English? She
No,
just
she spoke Indian all the time.
Oh, she just spoke Indian.
And yet, we kids could understand her and she could understand us.